Superman is better than Batman. Look, okay. Batman's cool. The coolest, some might say. And I would probably agree. Batman's cool as hell. I love that latex wearing, rooftop hopping insane bastard as much as the next guy. Hell, probably more than the next guy. Because I'm a nerd. But you wanna hear a secret? Superman is way better. So when I got back on Twitter and Mithy accidentally invited me to this DC Defying collaboration, I decided that it was time to take that opportunity to get a shit ton of views. But also to tell you why Superman is the best. So I sat down and I thought about what specific moment I could talk about to demonstrate the brilliance of Superman. I could talk about Superman Birthright, the story of a man finding his place in the world and becoming his best self while helping to raise up the people around him. I could talk about Superman the movie and how it created the template for every single one of your favourite cape flicks. I could talk about All-Star Superman and how it's the greatest piece of literature of all time. I said what I said. Grant Morrison is a god and I love them with all my heart. Go read that book right now if you haven't, and if you have, read it again or I swear to God I'll find you. I'll find you and make you wish Superman was real so he could come down and save your sorry ass from me. But no, maybe one day I will get to those. But today I've decided to talk about something else. A little scene from a little movie called Man of Steel. Is Man of Steel a perfect movie?
No.
Do I love it with all of my heart? Yes. I don't know, man. There's something about Man of Steel that just works for me. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand why someone wouldn't like this movie. Hell, I once was one of those someones. But over time, as I've watched and rewatched this film, it just works. I love it even more every time I watch it. But there's always been one scene that I've loved more than the rest. Even when I didn't really like this movie all that much, there was a scene I knew I would tear up watching every time, without fail. Superman versus the World Engine. But why is Superman so great?
But CJ, what about...
Shush. We'll get back to that. Superman is great because he's not a superhero. Okay, I know how that sounds, but hear me out. Yes, Superman was the first superhero, but people often forget he wasn't always that. Yeah, he was always a Superman, it's kind of in the name, but he didn't begin his career fighting off an alien invasion. Action Comics 1 doesn't feature Parasite or Brainiac or Lex Luthor. Superman wasn't created to tell tall tales of grand battles and planet-saving escapades. In Action Comics 1, Superman stops a domestic assault and saves random unimportant character Lois Lane, who I'm sure will never matter ever again, from being abducted by gangsters. Clark was created by two Jewish guys who just wanted to give other lower class immigrant kids living in 1930s America someone to look up to. Someone who would look out for them, because God knows no one else would back then. It's stories like that that are always the most interesting Superman tales. Stories where the man takes prominence over the super. Stories like All-Star, Birthright, and Man of Steel. Yeah, you heard me. The movie everyone says made Clark into an unfeeling, emotionless alien where the entire last hour is just one big fight scene. It's about Clark way more than it's about Cal. It's a story of this man, torn between two polar opposite lives, figuring out how to make them both work, or if that's even possible. Sure, it's also about that man punching another man as hard as he possibly can, but when you strip it down, remove all the bells and whistles, and make it its bare essential parts, it's the story of Clark finding himself, a story that culminates right here. But this is DC defined, not Superman defined. How does this represent all of DC?
CJ, what the fuck?
Quiet you, I'm getting there. DC isn't Marvel. Marvel's heroes are regular people, burdened with powers that, for the most part, they never asked for. They either got them by chance, through luck, or, in most cases, unluck. DC isn't Marvel. They weave tales of gods among men, warriors, and beings of mythic power who've worked their entire lives to hone their skills and use them. That's what sets DC apart. They don't tell stories about good people who happen to get powers. They tell stories of powerful beings who made the choice to use those unlimited powers for good, to give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. And no character, in my mind, embodies that ideal greater than Clark Kent. Clark is all-powerful, there's no getting around that. It's the reason so many people find him so boring. But to me, it's what makes him the most compelling character in the entire DC pantheon. Clark is all-powerful, but he chooses not to be. If he wanted to, he could be Kal-El, conqueror of Earth. But he isn't. He chooses not to be. He chooses to use his powers to help those around him, and not just on the grand planetary scale, no. He chooses to help in the small ways that really matter, to give everything he has to be the best he can be. He chooses to be human. He chooses to be Clark.
Oh my god, finally!
In Man of Steel, General Zod's plan is to terraform Earth into Krypton, using this massive machine called a world engine, so that the Kryptonian race can rise anew. Clark, having lived on Earth for a few years at this point, isn't really into that idea and decides he's going to stop it. Because of how the world engine works, half of the attack, Zod's forces and ship, as well as one half of the world engine, is in Metropolis, and the other half is over the Indian Ocean. The military go to Metropolis to try and hold Zod off there and save as many lives as possible, while Superman flies to the Indian Ocean as quickly as he can to stop the world engine. Clark is alone. There's no military, no Justice League, no super family to help him. Either he alone stops the world engine, or all of humanity dies. Should be easy enough, right? It's just a big machine, isn't it? There's something I haven't told you yet. The world engine's terraforming beam isn't only changing Earth's surface, it's changing the plant life, the atmosphere, everything, and making it like Krypton. Kryptonians are not an inherently powered race. They only gain their godlike gifts under the gentle glow of our yellow sun. On Krypton, they're as weak, as powerless, as mortal as anyone else. Superman isn't just fighting some machine. This is, at least so far, the only true threat to his life that Clark has ever faced. But he doesn't hesitate. He flies in, ready to begin figuring out how best to bring down this monolithic foe. When all of a sudden big Michael Bay Transformer-looking tentacles materialize out of nothing to kill him! Oh, Zaddy, how I love you. As we see Clark trying to fight off these tentacles, we keep cutting back to Perry, Lombard, and Jenny, desperately trying to escape the war zone of Metropolis and get to safety. Oh, come on! When I was younger, I used to hate how fight scenes would always cut away from the action to something less interesting. How in Revenge of the Sith they'd constantly cut back and forth between the climactic duel the entire prequel trilogy had been building towards and this hot mess of character assassination. How in King Kong, instead of following, Kong, we follow this dude on the ground for half of it. And even how in Man of Steel, they kept cutting back to Lois, Perry, Swanwick, anyone who wasn't Clark during the final battle. I felt like these cutaways to other, less exciting moments were dragging down the impact that could have been created if the filmmakers had just let the action play. But now I realize they're doing the exact opposite. These scenes, for the most part, are used by the filmmaker to demonstrate what the main character is thinking, and to heighten our understanding of not only the physical, but the thematic, and most importantly emotional stakes of the conflict. Superman has lost. The world engine's attack, in tandem with the weakening effects of the increasingly Kryptonian atmosphere, has taken too much of a toll. Despite his best efforts, the arms grab Clark and throw him through the rings of smoke and debris into the terraforming beam, presumably to his death. As this is happening, we return to Perry, Jenny, and Lombard. Jenny is trapped under the fallen rubble of the collapsed building. With the effects of the beam quickly approaching, Perry and Lombard desperately give everything they can to try and get Jenny free, but it's no use. The rubble is too heavy, the beam too close. Even if they could get her free, where could they go to get away in time? We return to a shot of nothing but the beam, until slowly Clark's pained, shaking hand lifts into frame, as he slowly steadies himself beneath the unimaginable force of this otherworldly creation. This is where I start to cry. Even writing, and I'm sure later recording this, I'm getting a little choked up. Clark could have been anything he wanted, good or bad. He could have been a celebrity. He could have been a nobody. He could have been a god among humans. He could have been a dictator among ants. But he's none of those things. He's just Clark. That's all he ever can be. In this moment, everything else falls away, and I'm reminded of why I love Superman so much. With the weight of the world literally on Clark's shoulders, the fate of an entire race of people entirely in his hands, he doesn't think about himself, about how he's probably going to die. He doesn't think about the grand battle of good versus evil. He thinks about us. Not all 7 billion of us at once, but a few individuals in an inescapable nightmare, and he thinks about what he can do to help. One last time, we cut away from Clark. First to the utter destruction of a car, a symbol of human innovation and strength, a symbol made of steel, to remind us that Clark is now just as human, just as vulnerable as anyone else. And finally, we cut to Jenny and Perry, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, simply content to be with another person in their last moments alive. Clark knows that he likely won't survive what he's about to do, but he has to do it. His whole life, Clark has been wondering what he is, trying to figure out his purpose. And in this beautiful, emotional, climactic scene, we watch as that all comes into focus. Clark Kent is a human being, and he's going to fight until his dying breath to make sure he's not the only one left. And that's why, to me, this scene is DC defined. As I mentioned earlier, DC Defined is a collaboration of countless of your favourite smaller comic book YouTubers, and there's a whole playlist full of videos from people like For Every Kind of Geek, Joshua Lozano, Film Caffeine, Production Journal, Drifty Film, and so many more, and that playlist will be linked at the top of the description. If you want to make your own video to put in the playlist, then please do. We'd all love to see what you guys have to say. So if you guys do make a video, make sure to either message me on Twitter or message Joshua Lozano on Twitter, and we'll make sure it ends up in the playlist.